So welcome and thank you all for taking the time to join us today. We are delighted to be here together. And in this session, we want to introduce you to a community platform with the ambition of better mental health outcomes for children and young people. We want to support the development of better treatments for children and young people to get a better understanding, better access and better outcomes. But much like the platform itself, we're keen for today to be community-led and interactive. So please do add questions to the Q&A throughout, and we'll have the chance to discuss together later in the session today. Today, you'll be hearing directly from myself and Eleanor Lee, who together we lead this project. But make no mistake, this has been a huge team effort, and behind the scenes, this has been an amazing collaboration of many people's brilliant talents and efforts. So a huge thanks to all of those who have contributed. But I guess at this point, you may well be thinking, what's it all about? So let's get us thinking about the AIM platform. Innovation in methods, designs, theoretical understanding offers us opportunities to revisit old challenges and to tackle new ones with a spirit of curiosity, persistence. Over the last few years, funded by the Biomedical Research Centre here at Oxford Health in the Mental Health and Development theme, we've developed an open resource, and you can access the platform here using the QR code. In our platform, it collates tools, methods and guidance for mechanism-focused research in youth mental health. It includes a searchable library of measures of psychological mechanisms and a set of resources to guide each step of the translational pathway. It's a living resource. We hope there'll be active contributions from all of you within the clinical academic community, so that the platform can serve as a home for examples of good practice and a hub for driving psychological therapy innovation for the mental health problems faced by far too many young people. But to get a sense of what this platform is all about, we thought it might help for you to hear a little from a few people who've had just a little chance to have a sneak peek ahead. So over to them.
This is a truly unique and excellent resource for anybody who wants to do research, either treatment trials or other kind of mechanistic research in child and adolescent mental health.
I would use this website as a psychology master's student to learn more about contemporary psychological measures for mental health in young people. So let's say I was completing a university assignment and needed to reference a specific measure, then I definitely use this resource to guide me.
As I frequently use outcome measures in my clinical work, having access to the AIM library will save me loads of time and ensure that I have the relevant measures, which will enable better treatment.
I'm a research assistant working in adolescent mental health research. And as a constantly evolving field, I think it's very useful to have this website to have a central place where all the resources and psychological measures are, and they're easy to find and navigate.
As a psychology master's student, I'd find this website very useful, especially when planning my research project. This website pulls together all the existing measures, which saves a lot of time and energy, as I wouldn't have to search for each measure across different websites. Also, the measures are grouped based on different categories, such as age groups and problem areas, which makes it even more convenient.
The clearly defined process for treatment development that starts with listening to individuals with lived experience and identifying psychological mechanisms will really help in developing inclusive and acceptable treatment for young people.
Hi, I'm Poppy Brown. I'm a clinical psychologist and researcher. I trained in the UK, but I'm currently based at Stanford University in California. I think for this project, I'm probably most excited about the potential for building a bit of a community and some collaborations, connecting with other researchers. There's just so much expertise and knowledge out there. So I think it's going to be a great resource and hopefully the beginning of a really amazing community. Having, again, a pooled resource of well-validated measures will be really, really valuable.
The mechanisms have been very well thought through, and I would recommend it to anybody.
So huge thanks to all those who have been involved and supporting us developing the platform to date. And I hope what you could see then here there is that whatever stage you may be at in your career trajectory and journey, together as a community we can pull together to develop more effective and accessible treatments for young people. And we hope that you will be the community who drive the platform forward. But first, let's ground this in our commitment to treatment development work. So we need to outline why better treatment development is needed and how we might begin that process. So here's the challenge. And for all of us working with children, young people, perhaps in our clinical practice, perhaps in our research, or for those of us who face this because it's experiences we may have had, or that perhaps in our family members or friends have faced, what we see is mental health problems are common. Too many young people experience mental health difficulties. We know the peak age of onset is early in life. 3/4 of all mental health problems start before the age of 25. This includes both common mental health difficulties, anxiety and depression, and more serious mental health problems such as psychosis or bipolar disorder. And all of this occurs at a key point in development, in that early phase of life where disruption at that time can have effects across the life course. And yet, too few people can access treatment. Only half of young people trying to get treatment can access help. And there are gaps in service infrastructure, gaps between policy and provision, and most importantly, gaps in treatment effects. Compared to adults, we see smaller benefit from treatment for our young people. Put simply, too few young people benefit from treatment, especially treatment that can be delivered at scale at the right time. But there is a route forward. There is an opportunity. This key age period gives us a window of opportunity, a key time for making impact, both for immediate benefits, but also longer term effects. But to make the most of this opportunity, we need to be clear on the target, to tackle the psychological causal mechanisms that are contributing to the problems. And we need robust methods to translate these clinical insights into effective treatments that are accessible at scale. We need to get the right timing and on the right target, and we need the right tests. We hope this platform will spark innovation and drive this treatment development. Because when we get that right, the reward is that children and young people get back to living the lives they want, to succeeding, to flourishing, to enjoying life. So what makes a good treatment? In essence, firstly, it needs to work, right? It has to be effective. But then the questions come. It needs to work on what target? What kind of treatment? Is it a treating a problem? Is it a prevention? Who defines what the target should be? And who does it work for and how? Secondly, a good treatment needs to be acceptable. We need people to stick with it, to be willing to give it a try. What about side effects or unintended consequences of treatments? What about the meaning of accepting treatment? And a treatment, of course, needs to be accessible. You need to be able to get it when you need it. This means we have to consider who delivers it, how it's delivered, what's the format, how do we ensure the quality? So we need to make sure we understand what makes a good treatment from the perspective of young people, families, and other stakeholders, because we need to make sure it works on targets that are important to them, that it's acceptable, that it's delivered in a way that fits into people's lives, that they can stick with and gain those benefits, and that they can access and receive that treatment at the point in time when they need it. So how can we do this?
So, over the decades, there has been considerable progress in the development of effective psychological therapies for adults. And this has been driven, at least in part, by the mechanistic approach taken to treatment innovation. And our work builds on this, drawing on the work of clinical academics such as David Clark, Anke Ehlers, Daniel Freeman, and many others. But children and young people aren't mini adults. And if we want treatments to be effective and accessible and acceptable, they need to be developmentally informed. We recognise that there's already a great deal of treatment development work underway with children and young people. But these studies are often reported separately and in a piecemeal way, which can make the underlying strategy difficult to discern. Our goal is to make that strategy explicit and facilitate its wider use. And to do that, we've outlined a 10-step approach to treatment development with the hope of supporting therapy innovation and impact. Here you can see a visual overview of the approach, showing the 10 steps, surrounded by the 3 foundations of the approach, which are developmental understanding, lived experience, and conceptual understanding. And we see this approach as a complement to broader guidance, such as the MRC Complex Intervention Framework and others. All the work along this pathway is guided by certain key principles. So first, there are important and explicit values of hope, respect, valuing the person and their perspective. These, of course, will shape the focus and style of our treatments and all of our work with young people and families, as well as the conduct of our research. Second, we see treatment development as an iterative process. It's not linear or prescriptive, but steps will be important and impactful at different moments, and it may not be necessary to complete them all. And third, we emphasize replicability. Transparent research practices and open science are an important response to the reproducibility challenge that we face in psychological science. So the keystones, or these 3 foundations that inform and bridge the steps along the pathway. The first is the developmental context. So childhood and adolescence are times of immense biological, psychological, and social change. That means that research into mental health mechanisms must be grounded in this developmental context. And we can think about the influence of development in a few ways. First, many psychological mechanisms of interest are shaped by cognitive and emotional processes that are undergoing change during childhood and adolescence, such as self-consciousness, identity. This means that we're often sort of aiming at a moving target. Second, individual level mechanisms don't operate in isolations, but they interact with environmental factors to influence risk, resilience, and the effectiveness of interventions. So these factors might include family dynamics, peer relationships, educational experiences, digital environments, life transitions, and we must consider these contexts in all of our work. Third, young people may have communication and information sharing preferences which influence the acceptability of the interventions we're trying to develop. It might include the style and tone of language, the balance of videos, images, and texts, for example. And also a sort of side note, but we want to highlight that measuring development is not straightforward. Age is typically used as the proxy, but it's an imprecise one. And development doesn't progress in a uniform, stage-like manner. So age alone may not capture the relevant variation. But at the same time, alternatives aren't straightforward either. So I suppose this is a call to encourage consideration of these challenges when undertaking this work, and to continue and strive to develop sensitive measures of adolescent development.
We believe that the voices of young people, families, and stakeholders are central to developing effective, accessible, and acceptable treatments. We want to amplify the voices of stakeholders, listening carefully together. And because if we listen carefully and work together, then we can define the treatment target. We can ensure that the difficulties that we're focused on and the treatments we're developing are on the exact things that the young people need help with. When we're working with people with lived experience of the problem, we want to allow for flexibility, fluidity of roles, and shared decision making. This helps us not only ensure that we define the key problem, treating the right target, but also that we understand it and that we can approach it in a way that is acceptable. We also need to think about issues of inclusion and equality and diversity, because without adequate representation during treatment development and evaluation, Interventions risk being ineffective or inaccessible, particularly for those who are facing intersectional disadvantages, multiple co-occurring difficulties or systemic barriers. And we want to work with stakeholders not only as advisors, but also as active collaborators. We want to use peer methods research and support peer-led publications such as this one. Our third keystone is all about the conceptual and theoretical understanding. Mental health problems are complex phenomena. They're made up of distinct yet interconnected experiences. Often there is diagnostic uncertainty, both in the immediate presentation for a child or young person and in that longer term trajectory. Yet mental health problems are also likely underpinned by many interrelated contributory causal factors. And while it can get messy and tangled into all those things, it also gives us multiple potential treatment targets. But we do need clarity on the target so that we can have precision in the treatment. So in this approach and through this translational pathway, we take a mechanistic focus. Because just like children, we want to learn about cause and effect. We want to work out why something happens and use that understanding to make better treatments. Specifically in this approach, we're focused on cognitive and behavioural processes that are amenable to modification. Examples are things like attentional bias, where our attention is focused, the safety-seeking or defence behaviours, and mental imagery, the pictures we see in our minds. But when selecting the mechanisms to target, we want to consider perhaps approaching those that are common, that are potentially tractable, and that are important to the young person. And then we need to begin pulling out a plausible explanation of the problem, how that mechanism leads to the difficulty, to give a psychological understanding of the problem. And this requires the application and likely development of psychological theories to make sense both of the problem and its causal mechanisms. This drives the treatment development by testing this hypothesized model. Maybe it's a new framework, or it's drawing on existing models, theories, and frameworks, and perhaps bringing that developmental lens to drive adaptations. To initiate this process, it can often help us to think about broad psychological principles and apply them to a specific clinical observation, and then expand this pattern across individuals and link out to broader thinking and behaviour. But we also, again, recognise this complexity, that these mental health problems are made up of distinct and interconnected experiences. And from a network perspective, then mental health problems can be understood to reflect this dynamic network of interacting symptoms. And perhaps that means that common or perhaps non-specific factors may carry more weight than previously considered. This mechanistic lens allows us to see things afresh. And targeting these common factors may bring wider benefits across a whole network of symptoms. This gives a route for precision within complexity. But we need all three keystones, crucially, to be in place across each of the different steps of a translational treatment development pathway.
So the 10 steps will take us from identifying the treatment gap to identifying and implementing new psychological interventions. And as a reminder, it's along this pathway that is typically iterative and built on these keystones. So the first step is identifying the psychological process we want to target. We often think that by listening carefully in our clinical work, the need for innovation can become clear. We might notice a recurring challenge in supervision or when reviewing therapy videos. And these clinical observations then guide our review of the literature and help ensure that we're developing treatments that target a meaningful process. We can then move to observing the phenomena. Typically, we can do this through qualitative methods, which offer a systematic approach that also affords richness and complexity. We need to measure accurately so that we can understand the scale of the problem, identify those in need, guide treatment development, and track intervention outcomes. And for this mechanistically focused work, we need good measures of the psychological processes of interest. Despite their limitations, self-report measures remain particularly useful because they can be used at scale in real-world settings. Combining standard questionnaires across multiple informants allows us to triangulate perspectives, while integrating them with daily diaries can help us understand how the processes unfold over time. Observational studies, particularly those using large-scale longitudinal datasets, play an important role in helping us assess scale and scope. They can strengthen causal inference, provide valuable insights into how these mechanisms change across development. However, they often lack detailed measures of specific processes, which can make it difficult to address the kinds of questions needed to inform mechanistic treatment development. Mental health problems are likely to involve multiple interrelated psychological processes, creating a whole range of potential treatment targets. Techniques such as network analysis and structural equation modelling are particularly well suited to this work because they're designed to model these multifactorial relationships. And then experimental methods, where we manipulate proposed mechanisms, offer a powerful approach to investigating their causal role. Such designs are crucial for isolating mechanisms and establishing causal relationships. But we need to think carefully about and continuously consider the trade-off between experimental control and ecological validity. We can then use these paradigms in treatment development, for example, through single-case experimental design, which allows us to test causal hypotheses early in intervention development. The gold standard in intervention evaluation remains the randomized controlled trial, but innovative designs, including adaptive and platform trials, can increase efficiency. Alternative approaches, such as propensity score matching, can also strengthen causal inference in observational studies. We then want to think about distilling this mechanistic learning, and methods such as mediation, back translation, and dismantling studies can help identify the active ingredients responsible for therapeutic change. And of course, last but by no means least, accessible implementation is critical. Yet too often there are delays and barriers, meaning exciting and important innovations do not reach those who need them. Implementation shouldn't be left to the end of the process, but be considered throughout the intervention development pathway. Innovation in methods, designs, and theoretical understanding offer opportunities to revisit old challenges and tackle new ones. And so we really hope that this platform will help with this endeavour. And we thought it might be a good opportunity to give you all a look at it yourselves. So here we go.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the AIM digital platform. For the next few minutes, I would like to take you on a tour of what the platform has to offer. On this page, you will find information and links to the 10-step translational treatment development pathway. On the right here, we have a visual representation of the pathway and underpinning keystones. And on the left, we provide a brief introduction and link to the open access journal detailing this treatment development approach. We provide information on the 3 keystones. So if, for example, I'm interested in development, I can click on developmental context. This will bring up more detailed information and link to the resources. Once on the resources page, you will find some helpful filters. You can filter by category. This includes all keystones and all steps. And you can also filter by resource type. So, for example, I might want to learn more. And then I might want to, maybe this may look interesting to me, so I click on read more. And in this case, it brings up a YouTube clip. As with the 3 keystones, if I want to find out more about the 10 steps, I go to the 10-step journey page. Here you will see an accordion list of all 10 steps. Each step includes a description and a link to associated resources. So this time, for example, I might want to go here. And here I have access to a series of video clips on perceived causal problem networks. Don't know what these are? Well, you now know where you can find out more. Also included on our platform is a library of measures. Here we provide some information about our approach underpinning the design and content of the library. You can access the library from the home page or from the tabs here. So this is our library of measures. Before we look at the measures in a little more detail, I'd like to show you the filters. So for example, you can filter by respondent, by self-report, parent-carer report or clinician. We have a filter for age and we have a filter for problem area. So for example, let me see, I might be looking for a questionnaire and I actually know who the author is. So I type the name in here and this brings up one measure. I then click on the measure. I can see that this is a measure of repetitive thinking. It hasn't been validated in ages 12 to 18. It should take about 5 minutes to complete. It's a self-report and is associated with these problem areas. You can also see that information included is an overview of the measure, scoring the measure, some psychometric properties of the measure, how to access the measure, the original development paper reference, and some associated references. And do a new search by problem area, for example. So I'm searching by anxiety, and these are the measures that relate to anxiety. I then might want to filter by self-report. Hopefully you can see that there are several options for searching. As our vision of the platform is as a community resource, this includes the library working as a living library. Therefore, I'd now like to show you how you can join our community and contribute a measure, either one you've developed yourself or a measure you feel will be of interest to others. So we would ask you to register. We would then ask you to complete a form. This form would then come to us for review, approval, and then publication. The final feature of the website that I would like to show you is the glossary. So here you can do a search by word. Or if you've got lots of time on your hands, you can search by letter. And that is the end of the tour. Thank you for listening.
Fantastic. So hopefully that gave everyone a little flavour of what was possible and what you're going to be able to access through the resource as we develop it and build it. But as hopefully was coming through in that video, it's becoming clear that we really want this to be a platform that is a community resource. So as well as using it to find measures and find information, we really would love you to add to it yourselves. So contributing questionnaires, resources, and your own ideas. And you can do this directly through the site as was just seen in that video, or by contacting us via our email. And also, hopefully you've seen the message in the chat. We would love you to just pop your contact details in if you're happy to be contacted in due course about, creating a more sustainable newsletter and mailing list. It's also, I suppose, a place where we want to showcase examples of best practice in treatment innovation. And we're keen to share research from diverse groups, so far beyond the limits of Oxford. So we would really encourage you, and I'm loving that I can already see this happening on the chat, to get in touch if you'd like to share your work. and we can help you to prepare materials, brief explainers like a blog or a short video to add to our platform. And secondly, today's webinar, which we're so delighted to see so many people joining, is the first in what will become a series. And we want to really use these as an opportunity for sharing examples of research and clinical innovation across the whole spectrum of professionals and backgrounds, researchers and clinicians, because we know so much good work is happening. And we would love to have guest speakers, discussion and Q&A. And so we'll advertise these and share updates via the news section of our website and in due course via our mailing list. So effective, accessible and acceptable, it's a mouthful that, I should be good at it by now, psychological therapies for young people make a difference. And we thought it'd be really important to hear from those it makes the biggest difference to. So let's hear from a parent and a young person with lived experience.
Hi, my name is Andrea Costa. I have the privilege of working across both research and lived experience. Professionally, I'm the project manager for training and academic career development at the NIHR Biomedical Research Centre, Oxford Health. I'm also Melody's mum. Melody is 9 years old, autistic, and has a speech and language delay. Becoming her mum has transformed the way I see the world and inspired me to make a difference. That journey led me to found Neurodiverse Voices Connect with the aim of increasing understanding and awareness of neurodivergence through the Neurodiverse Voices podcast. What began as a podcast only has grown into a community built on the values of love, support, kindness, and connection, creating space for neurodivergent voices and lived experience to be heard. When I think about the vision for AIM, I'm reminded that one of the biggest challenges in mental health research may be not just making discoveries, but it's also to ensure that those discoveries lead to meaningful, real-world support for children, young people, and their families. AIM has the potential to bridge the gap by bringing together researchers, clinicians, and people with lived experience to co-create better mental health support that can make a genuine difference. I'm passionate about co-production because I believe that best research happens when children, young people, and families are not simply participants, but equal partners. By combining research expertise with lived experience, we can shape support that is relevant, inclusive, and truly reflects the needs of people it is designed to serve. I'm excited to be a part of this journey.
Fantastic, so powerful. And thank you, Andrea. And we're now going to hear from a young person.
So I started taking part in this research when I was probably 15, 16 is when I first got recruited. And yeah, I was, so socially anxious, it was impacting my ability to interact with my peers, and just I think it was just it was one of those things where it was just I was so all the time and just constantly worrying about everything that I did and monitoring myself. And it was very hard for me to get any help. I think that, the wait list for CAMS was very long. Private therapy was not accessible. And also just schedules and stuff, going to see a therapist, I found, is a lot, it's not as easy to, fit into my schedule and whatever. So I got a chance to take part in an online therapy model. So it was online therapy. You'd have calls with your therapist, and you would work through the CBT sort of a CBT kind of therapy. But it would be all online, and you have an online resource to track all your modules, and you could refer back to them, which I think was very helpful in helping me kind of just consolidate all of the things that you're learning throughout the course of CBT. I think that it's very easy to kind of like go into a therapy session and then you hear all the things and it kind of just goes out the other ear once the therapy session ends. So I think it was really helpful to have like an online resource where you could just refer back to all of the things and you can kind of work through it at your own pace, and then, you know, kind of work through what you've read and what you've like learned through the module with your therapist at the end of the week. So I think that was really helpful for me. I think it was obviously also like it being online, it was a lot more easy to kind of schedule things with a therapist. I think that it was a lot more flexible, and yeah, it helped me kind of realize how in my head I was and how self-focused I was, and just like how people really weren't paying as much attention to me as I assumed people were, because, you know, all of my focus was on myself. So I assumed that everyone else was living the exact same experience of focusing on me, which kind of helped. It kind of helped me realize that people don't care as nearly as much as you think that they do. But yeah, it kind of helped me get out of my head a little bit. And, you know, it just helped me kind of interact a little bit more with my environment and just like listen a little bit more to the people around me, and just like actually have proper interactions with my peers and just the people around me and the world around me. And I think that that was something that I hadn't done for a long time, and which was impacting my mental health, because it's just me and then you feel so isolated. So yeah, it was really helpful for me. I think it kind of felt like a little bit of a breakthrough. And I mean, that being said, like it hasn't completely solved all of my problems. I still get anxious around people. You know, there's not much, you know, it's always going to be like a non-linear recovery type thing. And like I'm still a very anxious person, but I think that I have a couple more skills to help rationalize and work through it. And I think that now I'm, you know, rather than it being like 0 to 100, it's maybe 0 to 50. You know, I can kind of just be like, okay, when I'm feeling like that's kind of happening again, like where I'm getting anxious and I'm spiraling and I'm ruminating over things, it's kind of just like, okay, let's work through this step by step. And actually, it's really not the end of the world. But yeah, I think like since then, obviously now I'm like 22, so it's been a couple of years since I went through the treatment. I think it's really given me a lot of tools to help just cope a little bit. I think that it's just, yeah, kind of helped me engage when I think I was like so disengaged with my surroundings and the world around me for so long. It's just helped me kind of click back in a little bit, which I think has been really helpful for me.
And another hugely powerful account, and we're so grateful to those two people for sharing their experiences. It's really the important, kind of most important motivator for all that we do. So just kind of some final reflections really, because we really hope that you will explore and engage with this platform, maybe over a sandwich after this seminar, and use it to support your own work whilst also contributing to the wider community. And I can already see so many lovely examples in the chat that we would just be so excited to hear about. Because together we really want to achieve better understanding, better access and better outcomes for young people experiencing mental health difficulties.